Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. So in the month of March I read quite a lot of books. I read 20 in total and I wanted to talk about them. I haven't done like a wrap up in a really long time because personally it's a bit hard for me to talk about books kind of just in one sitting, but because I read a lot I just decided, you know what, I would do a wrap up. I would try and keep this kind of short, but we'll see. The first book that I read was The Last Sacrifice, which is a classic vampire romance book. So we have Rose, who's training to become a god for her best friend, who is a princess, and there is this like kind of student-teacher relationship. He is a bit older than her. It's a little bit fishy, okay, because she's like 17. Yeah, don't like how it's set up, but I will say I do like how the romance is written because of all that angst and tension. And this is one of those series that are really bad, that they're really good and you kind of just like eat it up because they're really fun to read. So I don't know, if you want something that's like kind of easy, you don't have to think too much, I would really recommend this one. I then read the second book to the Bloodline Chronicles, which is Golden Lily. This is like the spin-off of the Vampire Academy. This is actually my favorite and I read it before the Vampire Academy. This includes characters from the Vampire Academy series, and we basically have Sydney and Adrian. Sydney is an alchemist. They work together with vampires, but they're very much against them and think that they're evil creatures. And Adrian is a vampire, so you can see what's going on. Forbidden love, okay, angst. I love all that stuff where there is a bunch of, you know, they can't be together but they are like kind of attracted to each other, and then they kind of want to be together but they can't be together. Something about that is just like so good. I read the second book and then I just completely stopped. I forgot to read the rest, but I will read it slowly. Heart of Iron, I feel like at this point I'm kind of forgetting what the books are about. If I don't really like the book that much, I kind of forget what it's about. But this is basically like an Anastasia retelling set in space, like a Romanov Anastasia retelling. Look, that's kind of the best explanation I can give because there's nothing else to it. I think for me the plot is super interesting, but I didn't like the way that this was written and I didn't like the characters. We have Anastasia. Her love interest is like a robot. And it made it really hard for me to kind of root for the romance. I actually did not like the romance in this book because of the fact that it was really focused on it, whereas I wanted it to be more focused on the plot. Also, I didn't really care about that chemistry. Bruise is the second book to one, which is a book that I read ages ago, and this book I did enjoy. I think it was a little bit boring in the beginning of the book, but as I continued it started to pick up a little bit. It's one of those books where there's a bunch of like friends, found family. They're incredibly smart, they know how to hack into things, and they work together to kind of tear down this evil corporate man who takes control of all of China. And this is the last book because it's a duology, but it was really fun to read and I did really enjoy it. We have Two Can Keep a Secret. I love these authors' books. I loved One of Us Is Lying, so I was really excited to read Two Can Keep a Secret. I did really enjoy this book. Her books are just really easy to kind of fly through, and the mystery is always at the most out of pocket but fun thing to read. And we basically have two twins. They move to a new town and then there are a bunch of like girls who are disappearing and found dead, and there's like a pattern of this, so they're trying to figure out what's going on because their mother's twin sister also disappeared. I really like the romance in this book, which is like the funniest thing because there was hardly any romance, but there was something about it that just kind of made me giggle. The revelation of who the antagonist wasn't surprising, but I think what really got me was the ending. That last line kind of did it for me. I don't know, when I read it, it just like changed the whole perspective of the book. The Loneliest Girl in the Universe, I actually have been wanting to read for a really long time. Did I enjoy it? I will be honest, no. There's this girl who is stuck in a spaceship. She was born in the spaceship. Her parents died and now she's left in the spaceship. She's very young, but most of the time I found this book really boring because it was pretty repetitive. The same thing was happening because obviously she's stuck on a spaceship. She has nothing to do, and then she meets this guy and they basically are like online friends. And then there was this whole plot twist. I just felt like there was no build up to that plot twist. It came out of nowhere to the point where I thought it was interesting. It was definitely unexpected, but I just didn't care because the book was just so monotonous that when that came out, I was like, okay. The Everbearer Kingdom, I kind of had high expectations for this book. I made a video reading this book, which I think was like trying to get rid of my Kindle TBR video, and in that video I was literally like, I'm so excited to read this book. I really love this author, which is still true, and I was so excited to read it because the beginning of the book was really good, and then the more I progressed, the more I got annoyed because it started to get really boring. It was also very much focused on the romance, and I really liked the romance in the beginning, but then it just got too much into it and it was really repetitive that I got really bored. And then the ending, I had no idea what was happening. I had no idea what I was reading. I read the Lore and Lust series, so we have the first book, Lore and Lust, The Vanishing and The Awakening. I absolutely love this trilogy. I read it I think maybe 2 years ago. I honestly don't remember, but it's so good because it's just like a very simple vampire book, literally nothing to it. A vampire romance book that is really easy and fast to read. I really love the characters, I love the chemistry with each other, and I literally read this book so quickly. I swear nothing happens in it though, but I kind of like that. We have 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐢𝐬 where I did a video of my favorite childhood books and whether or not they're still good. So I read 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐢𝐬, The Golden Door, and 𝐴𝐼𝐻𝐿enA. I really still liked all of these books, which I'm really glad about, but they're all written by Australian authors as well, which I find kind of funny. I then read the Caldores novellas. So we have Everbearer Caldores and the part 2, which it's basically like 2 short stories surrounding Caldores, which is kind of like Christmas. It's a holiday and it takes place after the whole last book. The first novella was cute, and then I read the second one and now I'm just a little bit confused because I feel like it was not needed. I read Love, Magic and Misfortune, which is another Carla Nicole book. To be honest, I didn't really like this book because I found it a little bit boring. It's about childhood best friends, and then this guy has a manor and he's sick, so he basically hides in this manor, but then his girl best friend was kind of upset because he was stuck there, and then she's like, what happened to this guy? So she comes back into that small village, and then she meets him again, and then basically she finds out what happened to him. It's a really cute little romance book, but I don't know, I kind of found it a little bit boring. It was kind of a struggle for me to get through. I started reading the light novels of, what was it, the Apothecary Diaries, because season 1 just finished and I was like, I gotta read what happened. So I read, I think, volume 1 and volume 2. And I think the first 2 volumes, because I already know what they're about since I watched the anime, it wasn't super exciting to read as the other books I read after these 2 volumes. I'm telling you, I just read volume 4 and it was so good. I read 𝐜𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐭, which is a manga. I watched the anime when I was in high school, and I want to get into reading more mangas. Okay, I want to get into my manga reading phase. I've never read 𝐜𝐴ZZ𝐭 though. I watched the anime and then I was like, did it fully complete the manga? I'm not sure, but I want to read it now and I want to read a bunch of other ones. So I'm kind of just slowly reading the volumes because I don't want to force myself to binge read it. The last book that I read was The B of Sombras Snakes, which is a book that I actually DNF'd in the beginning of the year. I was actually 65% into it, and then I just gave up because I was struggling to read it so much. I was listening to the audiobook, then I went back on my Kindle, and I couldn't read it, so I decided to DNF it. And then I was like, you know what, I'm so close to finishing it, I'll give it another try. Also, I made this whole video talking about books that I DNF'd and giving them another try. I gave it another try. Wasn't my favorite. I just thought that it was very slow and very boring. The ending as well, it's kind of disappointing. So I'm adding this little clipping because I forgot to talk about the books that I DNF'd, which I wanted to add onto the end, but I completely forgot to film it. So even though I read a lot of books in the month of March, I also DNF'd quite a bit. This is filmed on my iPad, by the way, which is why the quality is horrible. First we have The Iron Widow. I actually read a good chunk of this book before I DNF'd it, but I think the reason why was because I could not understand this world or how it was built, and because it's supposed to be a sci-fi book as well, it really confused me because they had a lot of traditional Chinese methods, such as foot biting, and just the way that the main character was treated I feel like was very old Chinese, if that makes sense. And it's set in this futuristic world with this technology, and there are these robots where you kind of put your chi into them and then you can fight against these monsters who are attacking them. And for me, I felt like those two things were just super conflicting. I also didn't really like the main character. I felt like she was just so aggressive, and at that moment I didn't want to read a book that was super, I guess, negative. But if you guys like the Poppy War, I feel like you would like this book because it includes a very like morally grey main character. I could possibly revisit it in the future because the plot of it was very interesting. It was also kind of confusing for me to understand. A Deal with the Elf King. To be honest, I didn't really try to read this book that much. However, I was very excited to read it because it was written by 𝐜𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐻, which I've read some of her books in the past. I read A Duel with the Vampire Lord, which is part of the series, which I also really enjoyed. But I don't know, I think something about the way that this book was written I didn't really like, and the way that the main character was written as well. It just felt very fake. The characters were very two-dimensional. And then the last book that I DNF'd was Daughter of the Pirate King, which was a book that I was really excited to read because I heard people say really good things about it. But I think with me, I barely read anything of it. But I already knew that it wasn't a book that I would like. I think the reason why I didn't like it was partly because of the writing, but also the romance. I know this is such a stupid thing, but the romance has to be good, okay? The romance is a big factor to the book. But we get introduced to who I assume is a main lead, and they're like instantly flirty, like banter, even though he literally abducted her. So that's basically all the books that I read in March. I feel like in March I had such a great reading month, and then I was like, oh, I want to read that many books in April. It's currently April right now. I'm not feeling it. If you guys want to see more wrap-ups, let me know and I will do more of them. I'm gonna try doing TBRs as well because I normally don't, but maybe doing monthly TBRs will kind of convince me to read more books.